it's like sort of, it's our job to bring a positive energy to the project. You know, yeah, we're hired to play the bass, but we're also there to facilitate whatever's happening musically. You know, whatever facilitates the project is being professional in essence, because you're making it happen. That's your job to do that.
The word that comes to mind when I think of today's guest and how we got connected is serendipity. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are chatting today with Bradley Lovelace, who is on tour right now performing Les Mis, and he's performing Les Mis on his Arnold Schnitzer Ergonomic Contrabass. So here's the serendipity. I was at the Violin Society of America, VSA, competition and convention recently, and I ran into Arnold. Arnold said that he was planning on meeting Brad while he was in town and actually using his bass for one of the events at the VSA convention. So we had this conversation. Then I walked outside, literally ran into Brad on the street. He was walking in, I was walking out. We started chatting. He, Arnold, and I got some lunch together. We spent a lot of the day together. I actually saw the Cleveland Orchestra that weekend. Brad saw it the next morning. And we both watched Arnold and his luthier presentation along with Brad's bass at that event. And then the next day we got together to do this interview. And Brad is the sort of person I'd want to be chatting with anyway for the podcast. He's had such a wealth of experience in the music world, in the touring production world, performing in New York. We get into all of that and much more. I know you're going to love this conversation. And I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, D'Addario Strings, Upton Bass, Steve Swan, Colstein Music, and the Bass Violin Shop. More on them in a bit. But let's dig into this conversation recorded live in Cleveland with Bradley Lovelace. Bradley Lovelace, chatting with him in Cleveland. He's here playing Les Mis, doing the touring show of Les Mis, and we ran into each other on the street yesterday.
Yep.
And you were bringing in your Arnold Schnitzer. Is it called the Ergo Bass?
He calls it the Ergo Bass.
Okay, so you got your Ergo Bass here. We're at the Violin Society of America, the VSA convention competition. Brad loaned that bass to Arnold for this bass presentation we did yesterday. So it's great to meet you in person.
Great to meet you too. I mean, I recognized you from your celebrity status now.
Well, it's been like a fun couple of days of just amazing coincidences and just like what's the word? Serendipities. The word. Yep. Yeah. So then Arnold said, "You need to chat with Brad for the podcast." I'm like, "Yes, we do." So thanks for making the time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So what's it like touring the North America with Les Mis? What's that gig like? Just as much detail as you want to give. I'd love to know.
Sure. Well, this is my fourth national tour, so I'm guess fairly seasoned at this sort of thing now. This is my second time doing Les Mis, so I guess I kind of have a groove with it. There's hotel living and there's Airbnb living. Sometimes we mix it up. Typically, we travel on Mondays, and there's nothing happening that day. It's just purely a travel day. Tuesdays are always sound check, and then an evening show. So usually the shows are Tuesday through Friday evenings, and then Saturday and Sunday are matinee and evening shows.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a steady schedule for sure.
How long have you been on the road now with Les Mis?
This opened up in August of last year, so just a little over a year.
Over a year
and change. We had some breaks, but yeah.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, that Rule 24 thing, if you want me to get into that.
Yeah. So what is the rule?
The Rule 24 is this thing in the pamphlet B touring contract, basically making it so in specific cities, for example, Chicago, L.A., St. Louis is one of them. Detroit's another one of them. Basically, if a tour that sits for longer than a week or more of a long-term engagement, that tour can only carry 5 musicians. So then that kind of guarantees work to locals, kind of spreads the work out through.
Okay.
You know,
How many musicians are in the traveling production?
We have 14.
14. Okay. And what are the instruments? What's in that?
It's a string quartet of 1 violin, viola, cello, bass, 2 keyboards. That does a lot of they do like guitar patches, harp patches, and sort of filler. I mean, they're trying to fill in the sound because we're a very small string complement. Our brass are comprised of a bass trombone that doubles on tuba, 2 French horns. I feel like I'm going to sing the Christmas song, Partridge in a Pear Tree.
Right.
Sorry, I'll go back. There's a bass trombone with a tuba double, 2 French horns, trumpet. And then we have percussion that looks like a Terry Bozzio setup.
Oh, really?
Like,
oh, cool.
Just crazy. You know, he's just surrounded by drums.
Yeah.
Like I love looking at his setup. It's kind of very like something very rock star Frank Zappa about it. Did I miss anybody? Oh, the wind section, of course. We got a flute that doubles on alto flute, recorder, and piccolo. We have our reeds book is a clarinet book. It's bass clarinet, E flat, and B flat clarinet, and then we just have oboe and English horn.
Okay.
So and the winds are staying with their like respective family of instruments. We don't have somebody like playing bassoon and sax and you know, like some shows might do.
Right. And you're playing. This is an exclusively upright.
Yes, this show's all upright.
Okay, but Les Mis wasn't originally upright. Is that correct? So this is a do you call it a reorchestration? Is that what?
Yeah,
okay.
I think they reorchestrated this. Well, the tour that went out in 2010 was basically the same orchestration as this one, and I think there was a production before that that they made the change to upright bass.
Okay, that
was like called the first revival or something like that. Yeah.
So, in terms of, I'd love to know like bass tech, like how are you know, whether. Are you amplified in some capacity? And then also just like tech in general? Are you all wearing cans? Do you have monitors? What's that whole setup like?
It's an interesting mix. We have our keyboards and our percussionists have in-ears basically, or headphones of some kind. The keyboard players will sometimes take the cans off because they want to hear a live sound because they have a lot of stuff with the strings.
Yeah.
So they're trying to play kind of ensemble. And then if not, you know, then they can also provides them a little bit of hearing protection too. All the strings and brass and winds are like we're not using AVMs, we're not using in-ears or anything like that. We're all just going off of live sound.
Okay.
The amplification basically happens just through mics. I have 2 mics. One is like a contact mic that's like stuck on the front of the body with like putty, and then there's like a suspended mic that hangs below the bridge.
Below the bridge. Okay.
It's like the head of it actually ends up levitating right between, you know, right below the bridge arc and the body of the bass.
And you're so you're playing on this beautiful Arnold Schnitzer Ergo bass.
Yeah.
Such a cool instrument. Ever since I first saw that bass, I was like, I want one of those. Is it mostly an Arco show? Is it a pizzicato show? Is it fairly diverse in terms of that?
It's a very heavy Arco show, but a lot of it's very much like rhythmic playing. There are some like moments of like where there's like a sort of a string quartet moments, I guess you can say, that happen. So you have to have more of a lighter texture and a little more lyrical thing. And then there's the pizzicato stuff. A lot of times there's orchestral kind of pizzes, and then there's like kind of pop sounding pizzes because it's kind of a pop classical texture, you know. So sometimes they want that like boom, boom, boom like sound.
Yes,
which is why I use a spy recorder.
Right, and it's interesting. We were checking out Arnold and Brad and I were checking out his bass, and both Arnold and I were like, "Wow, spy recorders!" And they sound great on your bass. They're actually rich, and they've got this clarity to them, but they've got that wonderful spy recorder sustain.
Yeah, they seem to be working good for this particular situation very well.
It's great. It's such an easy bass to play. Just that entire register. It's a dream. Anybody, like all the way up into the upper positions and the lower notes, and you get the beautiful A string notes and extension notes. It's a really really nice.
He's
bass.
really constructed a great instrument, and how much it's opened up since I've been playing it. I'm glad I have it on the road because now it's just getting played. Otherwise, it'd be sitting in his shop, just being still and not moving.
Now,
so
I loved the outside of the show because I mean you're obviously in great shape. Like you have found a way to make road life work well for you, and I know that many musicians find that to be and others maybe that's not the right setup for you. So you must have some sort of routine that's working for you. Can you just talk about like what you're doing when you're not actually in the pit, whether that's working out or time on the instrument or even taking in the cities? How do you spend those non-show hours?
Well, there are obviously some things that are week to week the same, and then there's some things that change depending. Like, for example, in a city like Cleveland, like going to go see the orchestra, or got to do something that there's something like that to see, or an art museum, something cultural, then you got to try to do that. But there are cities where it's a little bit desolate, and you got to kind of have something to keep you going. When our percussionist was... he found out when he was hired for this, he reached out to me because he knew I had toured before, and he kind of was asking like, oh, what are the things that kind of what you're asking? What do you do to kind of, keep yourself going? And the first thing that came to my mind was like, try to have a project for yourself, even if it's not like a public recital, like some kind of project, like you're learning a piece or you're trying to develop something about you're playing, something to improve, so that this show is not the only thing that you're doing, and it's not your only outlet of growing musically, because it's the same thing every night.
That's got to be particularly important in your case, where it's the same show every night. And while there obviously are variances, even though it is the same show every night, every night's a little different, the audience is a little different, but it's still you're doing your weeks are very similar musically,
right?
So what are do you have a current project, or what are some of the projects?
I think projects might be hyperbole. Like I'm just like learning pieces,
sure,
but
cool.
I try to set I try to just set goals, a timeline, say, okay, I want to learn this piece and I'm gonna record it on this date and just put it away. No matter what it is, I'm just trying to catalog stuff. Previous tours I would like, I want to transcribe this thing, or just something where you set a beginning date and end date, and this is what I want to accomplish, and sort of plan the steps in between. It gives me something sort of to work for, and because you could easily just, if you wanted to, you easily could sleep until the afternoon, and I've seen people do this.
Sure,
there's people do this. It's not the healthiest choice. They might go out, drink till 2-3 in the morning every night. Easy to do. If because it's accessible and you get out late. And next thing you know, it's 3 or 4 o'clock, and you're looking to get dinner, and you're going to work again. You don't have any life. It's not a balanced life. So I short story long, I said try to have a project, something that keeps you sort of engaged.
When do you usually wake up in the morning? Are you a morning person?
I'm more of I wake up around 8 or 9 or something.
Okay, so fairly early. Yeah. Especially for someone playing nights.
Yeah. I would say so. Otherwise, I don't feel like I have a day, or I don't feel like... The thing is you want to avoid having the show be your whole life, or feel like that's the only thing happening. So you want to try to artificially create something that...
an external structure of your own. And it's got to be particularly... it could be a slippery slope to let the show become your life, especially when you're touring, because you are... What's your permanent address? you're a new place every few weeks. You know, that I can see how the one consistency would be the show, right? Unless you build something yourself.
That's right. And you know, you have to remind yourself that like we're not like tenured. Like we're hired for a period of time. As long as the show runs, we're going to have to find another gig after this. So I think it's extremely important. I mean, for me, I need to keep doing things that are going to prove to keep me versatile for later, because I'm going to be out there trying to hustle and get more work again.
Yeah, that's the thing I've always thought must be. It would be terrifying as a show player. I had several people that worked Broadway in Chicago for years and years. You know, you do a show for a long time sometimes, but there's really no guarantee that there's even going to be an instrumental spot for you on the next show. Not even if they wanted to hire you, that might be, this show is going to have this requirement or that requirement.
Exactly.
And that's a moving target. The world of musical theater and I mean, you know. And so there's so much we can talk about, but this is the fourth tour?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the others before this that you did?
I did the last Les Mis national tour. You know, that was out from 2000. Well, it opened end of 2010 and closed in 2013. And then I took a hiatus from the upright shows, and I did a couple electric shows. I did Flashdance. I took over for this bass player named Mike Preen, and he's a guy he's in the city. He's subbing on Broadway and doing that kind of stuff right now. He did Book of Mormon after that, but anyway, I digress. So I took over that book for him. He wanted to get off the road for a little bit, and then the contractor for that was contracting for Dirty Dancing, which is the next show I ended up doing. And Mike was offered it first because he was like, that's kind of like the Flashdance guys got offered that gig. And fortunately, he wasn't going to do it, and he was nice enough to recommend me. You know, so my foot got in the door, because I hadn't really put my foot in the door as an electric player in this scene yet. You know, so I needed I needed that support. So he got me in the door for that. I did that for a few years. And then while I was out on that, I got called for this. So
one of the great bass players of all time, Fred Zimmerman, former principal bass of the New York Philharmonic. He was Barry Colstein of Colstein Music. He was Barry's bass teacher. Here's Barry on Fred Zimmerman.
Anybody that knew Fred would say he was one of a kind. I mean, the man was probably the most talented, the most giving. He was the most interesting. Not only was he an amazing teacher, I mean, an amazing performer, he was an amazing artist also. He was truly a great artist.
Along with Fred Zimmerman, people like Milt Hinton, Homer Mensch, Orrin O'Brien, and so many others have had their basses worked on at Colstein's or had instruments made for them by Colstein's. Thank you, Barry, for everything that you've done for the bass world. And folks, check them out at Colstein.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Bass Violin Shop, which opened in 2001 as a small double bass workshop in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, they're staffed by 3 full-time, highly skilled bass luthiers, and they specialize in double bass sales, rentals, setup, restoration, and repair. For nearly 20 years, they have satisfied thousands of clients by offering quality instruments, knowledgeable service, reliable repairs, and superior restorations at affordable prices. Did you know that they regularly ship basses nationally from coast to coast? Contact their team to find out more information about the shipping process and how you can get your dream bass delivered to your doorstep. For more information and current inventory, visit their website at bassviolinshop.com and be sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass. And you know, there's a lot that goes into being a bass player beyond that initial purchase of a bass. We need bass bows, we need bass covers, we need stands, we need new strings, pickups, wheels, quivers, upgraded gear like tuning machines, end pins, repair parts, all of that. And when someone's looking for some new bass gear or to upgrade something on their bass, I send them to Steve's shop. He's located just south of San Francisco in the Bay Area, and he is the largest dealer in basses between Los Angeles and Canada. That is a big distance, folks. Learn more at steveswanstringbass.com. And thank you so much, Steve, for sponsoring the podcast. What's the experience of doing a show exclusively on the upright versus an electric show like? How's that different in terms of just like the experience, or like dealing with the gear, or what are some differences? I don't know. I'm a real amateur electric player.
Well, as far as like the physicality of playing the show, the electric's a lot like easier.
Sure.
I mean, in terms of just like moving around.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's an easier. I mean, to be a great electric player is,
right.
It takes so much dedication. But I mean, the physicality of the instrument obviously is like much less to even just push the strings down.
Right.
Audio things aren't a problem because we have these earbuds and we have these mixers, the avian mixers, and we can put in whatever levels we want, so if you want to hear more of so and so or not want to hear so and so, for better or for worse, you don't have to worry about pitch so much other than having your instrument in tune.
Right.
But I'm not responsible for tuning and as much. There was a fretless thing that obviously you do, but just the comfort of like sitting and playing is with a guitar is just a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
And but musically, it's I love to do both.
Yeah.
And gear wise, I don't know. I had some pedals, like some effects pedals. You don't have to deal with an amp. Everything's plugged in direct. I mean, I don't know. Gear wise, everything was pretty solid. I used these exotic electric basses. They were very steady. They stayed in tune. I didn't have to re-intonate them. They were very stable, so I didn't really have any problems with that. And the upright is the one that I have to baby.
Sure.
Like I was saying, I have this ergonomic bass out now, and it's a carved bass, so I have to be very cautious about. Like for example, we're going to Minneapolis next month.
All right, Minneapolis in December.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like we're talking
challenging,
like 12
weather.
degrees, and so. For legs like that, I'm opting to drive the double bass because I just don't. When the crew's loading it in, the bass travels with all the gear, so they have like a formidable load in to deal with, and that stuff could be sitting out there for hours.
Right,
so.
and it's probably the most fragile thing,
exactly,
and most temperature specific. So that's smart.
If usually the last tour I took the last Les Mis, I took a hybrid plywood and then with a carved top bass, that was worth far less than this one is, and it was great because I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But now that I have this, I have to baby it and make sure when we go through climates like that, that I take care of it.
But the positive is you have this Ferrari of a bass. There's this like beautiful instrument of yours that really sounds great. It's got to be a joy to play.
It really makes a big difference, actually. Just going you go in the room and you at least we're playing the same show every night, no matter what happens. But it's like, I really enjoy playing this bass.
Yeah.
At least I have that.
That's something that I'm talking to many musicians in, even orchestras like the Cleveland Orchestra here or Chicago Symphony or what have you. It's that simple pleasure of just like getting a good sound out of the instrument. That's like what you ask, what do you love most about playing? And it's just like that beautiful buttery sound, like what this Arnold Schnitzer, this ergo bass gets.
Right.
So I got it. Okay, so you started doing the Les Mis in 2010.
That's right.
Okay, so what? So you've basically been doing that with a few hiatuses in there for the last 8 years or so.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you? If we go back in time a bit, did you picture yourself doing that? Was that a goal for you when you were younger? How did you end up doing what you're doing?
It's it just happened by accident. I had this opera gig in New York. In 2000, I think that was the year before, like 2009 or something like that. And I didn't know that the cellist I was playing next to was really tight with the Broadway contractor, a big Broadway contractor, who's probably contracted hundreds of shows and for big artists and et cetera, et cetera. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was trying to do my best, be a good colleague, those things that everybody talks about, and he, by some grace, recommended me to this person. He didn't know me that well, and that's kind of how it happened, So the contractor called me up and said, I haven't heard of you because I haven't really been in that scene, but I'm just going to go off of this guy's recommendation, and I was grateful.
I'm having fun going back in time here. This is fun. So what were you doing before that? Because I know you eventually moved to New York City, but like as you got into that opera gig, what did those previous years look like?
I moved to New York in 2000.
Okay.
So I graduated from Arizona State University in the fall semester. So
who was teaching at Arizona State then?
Dan Swaim at the time.
Oh, really? Get out of here, Dan Swaim.
Yep.
Love Dan Swaim.
Yeah.
I just saw he's like one of the these amazing Suzuki pioneers on the bass, and I just saw him do a chat about the state of young bass teaching in May. So I just saw him recently.
He's great. I actually took I observed one of his book one things. He's just great with the kids in that pedagogy.
Wow! So from Arizona State to
and then
New York City?
Yeah, I had been studying with one of the. I had studied with one of the guys in the Phoenix Symphony. His name's Mike Cassapetes, and he had studied with Orrin O'Brien. And this guy's playing was just phenomenal. I was like, God, I want to play like that. And I hadn't really seen anybody use a German bow like that, So my thought was like, I got to go study. I got to try to study with this woman, Orrin O'Brien. And I reached out. We got an audition that turns out I could go to Manitz in the middle.
Yep.
Like you could apply in the middle of the year. So since I graduated in fall, I wanted to start in the spring semester. And it worked out, got in, started working with her. And then she's like, oh, maybe you should think about doing the orchestra program at Manhattan School. So I ended up going over there and doing an orchestra program there with her and Tim Cobb. And after that, I got out and I just was picking up freelance work, really. I took a few auditions, and at some point kind of ran into a funk with, I had this instrument, and I'm sure you heard Arnold say something about it. I don't know if you were there for that part, but he remembers the bass.
Really?
He remembers that bass because it was super problematic. Okay. And I bought it in Arizona, and it did great there, and I got to New York, and that's when its true colors showed.
A little different climate.
Yeah, and it started. What I didn't know was it had been glued with white glue.
Oh.
And so, of course, when the wood shrinks and all that, started cracking. So basically, I had a very problematic bass for a while, and it was inconsistent. Some days it would sound great, some days it didn't. But this was proving to be problematic for gigging and doing things. Lucky for me, a great friend of mine who was a teacher of mine in Arizona moved to New York, and he had bought a bass that belonged to Rufus Reed. It was a giant Tyrolean, 7/8, huge, like like a 43-inch string length, enormous, but like sounded wonderful. And he's like, you know what, man, you can just borrow this for a while.
Oh, that's great.
And I felt like when I started using that, it helped me to get work, because I felt like I was on something that I could play on. That was because that other one was just too inconsistent. And
what kind of work were you doing? Were you doing orchestral work? Were you doing
just
show
like sort of like a freelance pickup work? I subbed in New Haven Symphony some. There was this orchestra called the POA Orchestra, Pacific Orchestra of the Americas. They had things going. They did tours in Mexico and played through the city, and then basically whatever I could pick up. Just a lot more little freelance things, and doing some teaching. the theater thing didn't really come into play until around.
You weren't thinking.
I wasn't really
that
thinking
point.
about it.
Yeah.
No, but I once I started doing it, I felt I derived pleasure from it, and I thought this would be cool too.
Were you playing electric bass as well? Like, was that something you'd started when you were younger, back in Arizona?
Yeah,
like many of us. Okay.
I actually. Did you start on electric bass too, or
I started at violin, and then I really wanted to play electric bass.
Right.
But my parents wouldn't let me quit orchestra. They're like, you got to play something. So I went over to double bass, and then that was it. But I had to cut. I think I haven't played electric bass much since my teens, but I did have a band. My first band was called Toxic Death.
Nice.
A very good 14-year-old band, name. And then we changed our name to Committed, and then we broke
metal.
up. Yeah, it was extremely metal.
Nice.
but yeah, so I think so many of us play some of that, but I've done very limited. So you had that in your background.
I was well, as a kid, I started taking piano lessons very young. I took violin lessons, and I took clarinet lessons, and I was just not really dedicated to any of them because I think we're drawn to the bass for a reason, and those don't have those qualities that we're looking for. So at some point, I grew up in the kind of the MTV era, and I wanted to play rock guitar because I thought that was cool, and I dug the heaviness and groove of it. Little did I know that was because of the bass and the drums. That's where I wanted to be, and I thought it was the guitar doing that. So I started playing guitar, and I'm like, guitar's cool, but I don't know. Anyway, my buddies were starting this band. They didn't need a guitarist. They needed how most people start playing bass, probably in that particular rock way. They needed a bass player, and then I was like, oh, this is it. This is where this sits in the frequency, the harmony, the backbone, being in charge of the groove, or at least a big part of it. That's where I wanted to be in the music. So that's kind of when it took hold. And then upright came later, after high school.
After high, so okay. So did you initially start off as a music major?
I went to a community college because I couldn't major in electric bass anywhere, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was like, I wanted to be a musician, and I knew I needed to learn more, and I needed to study. So I need to study jazz. I need to learn more about music in depth. And then my first jazz teacher, basically, the said guy who lent me Rufus's bass, was my teacher at the community college there. And then he started me on upright.
Wow. Yeah. You must have had some hustle on that upright bass to go from not playing to at a level where you're going to study with Orrin O'Brien and Tim Cobb.
There were my undergrad years were hectic in that way for sure. And it was a lot of work it's a lot of work for anybody anyway, but there was a lot of catching up to do. I couldn't imagine doing that now because the level of it seems like the younger players are already it's seemingly at a much higher level coming into college. So
I had a fascinating conversation with Trevor Davis, who just won 2 certificates here for bass workmanship. Great. So Trevor's from Vegas. And he and I were talking about, I don't know if we called it desert hustle or something like that, but we were just remarking about how many people that come from from Phoenix.
Yeah.
We were talking about whether it's Phoenix or Vegas or Albuquerque or something like that, how a lot of people have really been good at hustling their way, and we were speculating. This is totally a right turn, but on maybe the fact of growing up somewhere where you would die if you didn't have the modern there's just more urgency it gets some survival instinct in you or something. It's something I feel is real different where I live in San Francisco or something where life's just a little less extreme. The desert's not going to consume you if modern technology. So
I never thought of it that
just
way.
throwing it out, because I was man, to go from your community college, and there are several. One of the lyric opera bassists, Andy Anderson, started off community college in Oregon.
Yeah,
and I've actually talked to many people who have had that path. Who, you know, you look at what they're doing professionally, and you're like, wow, you must have gone to Curtis and then done X, Y, and Z. Why did, I mean, who doesn't want to move to New York? But also, it's like, you couldn't pick a more different, maybe you could pick a more different, but it's pretty different from
it's
Arizona State, and in terms of like hecticness, cost of living, competition. Like, why did New York, why was that
it was
your radar?
Really all because of Oren.
Okay.
I wanted to study with her the most. That's what drew me there.
I had Oren on the podcast maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. 2 years ago, maybe at this point. Love Oren. So great. We had probably like a 2.5 hour chat about you name it. It was an epic, wonderful conversation that many people who know Oren probably had similar conversations. But like, tell me about Oren as a teacher. What are some of your favorite moments, takeaways? What was she like as a teacher? Any favorite memories from studying with her?
Probably my favorite one is one of the more slightly painful ones.
Okay.
Like, I got to New York and you know, I worked hard,
yeah,
you know, but I needed something else to get to move forward, and she made that very apparent. So it was just like, there were lessons where it was like, at the beginning anyway, you know, like the first few lessons, like I would play something and she'd be like, stop, you know, and it got to the point where like, okay, I need to like take lesson notes, and I nerded out, you know, I didn't want her to have to repeat herself. So I don't know, the first beginning part of the lessons were tough because she was trying to get me to something that wasn't in me yet, you know. Once those things started settling in, then we found a groove, and you know, I felt like she was just good at like saying, here's your setup, this is why you play this way, this is why you use the weight this particular way, and bow speed and distribution of bow. She loves getting deep into the bow. I mean, all great teachers do. It's not, you know, that's not just her, but
no,
you know,
she loves
Zimmerman.
That, yeah.
Zimmerman wrote the bowing book.
Right.
That was her teacher. So like,
right. No,
there's something, you know, there's something about it.
It's this fabulous legacy going back of like great pedagogy from Oren. Yeah, I mean, it's really, and Tim Cobb, who you work with too. I mean, some of these, it's really cool to be able to trace back through a couple generations who they all worked
like
with.
Tim came from like the Roger Scott school, I think, is that's correct, like the Curtis
while
Philadelphia thing.
Oren grew up in L.A. and worked with, is it Reinshagen? I'm probably mispronouncing. Yeah, but like that whole different tradition, and I remember speaking with Oren about like getting to the New York Philharmonic, and obviously like what most people, and even Time Magazine, an article about like first woman in a major orchestra, but she was like, I am just as proud or more proud of being first Fred Zimmerman student in a major, and first German bow player in this orchestra.
I did not know.
Yeah, it's really interesting to chat about that.
When I was recently chatting with Gary and Eric of Upton Bass, I asked them, how did they do what they do? How do they build their presence and be so top of mind among bassists around the world? Here's what they said.
My ego doesn't want to say this, right? And Eric's won't like it either. But because of the timing, we couldn't do, again, what we've done.
Yeah. And what they have done is absolutely extraordinary. From their beginnings as an accessories shop online to now making over 120 basses a year. They're coming up, as I record this, on 1,700 basses. They've got an army of satisfied customers who bought multiple basses. They're just really doing great things. They do great work and stand behind their products. Check them out at uptonbass.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, guys. This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. Each time the string winds around the peg, be sure that it lays neatly next to the previous coil as opposed to crossing over itself, which increases the risk of breaking. Wind each string from the middle of the peg outward, making sure never to rub up against the peg box wall, which also increases risk of breakage. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. So let's say someone's listening right now in Phoenix or wherever, not New York.
Yeah.
And they're like, sounds like Brad's got a cool career. I want to do that. Short of calling you up, which, you know, I was talking with David White about this. This is the word networking, and he had a great quote, and I think I can remember. It's like networking. It's not rocket science, but it is kind of rocket science. And not that, I mean, you were describing the opportunity that ended up leading to this touring life was like just being a good colleague with this cellist. It's not there was nothing intentional, but like at a certain point, you got to make that connection. You got to make that contact. Like from your vantage point, like being in the business all these years, like, you know, what would you advise somebody in Phoenix or Vegas or Sacramento or wherever, it doesn't matter, who's maybe 16, 17, 18, right around there? Like how should they set themselves up to like maybe have the opportunity to do some work similar to what you're doing?
Well, I think first of all, if they know their why, if you will, like why they play the bass, why they want to make music, that just start there. Yeah. You know, and that could then once you got that kind of worked out, then you need to find a role model, model, somebody to a mentor, you know, like what we all do. We look for teachers. Fortunately in Arizona there's a lot of resource.
A lot of good players.
You know, Catalin's there. Amazing. Doc is still there. Yep. The Phoenix Symphony guys. You know,
there's a lot.
There's a good, you know, there is people to tap into. One of the guys in this, Jonathan M. Sandy, studied with Hal years ago.
It's fantastic.
He turned me on to the boardwalking book. Yeah. Actually, he got me started on that.
He's an amazing player. He used to play in the Grant Park Symphony, so I've played with him a few times.
Wow.
Yeah. So boardwalking was a big thing for you.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, like a clear step, you know.
I totally agree. That's one of those, you know, I'll tell you, just sidebar from that, of course, but like, I can't tell you how valuable both boardwalking and then stroking, finding those books. Yeah. I got to the point where I was using all sorts of things with students when I was teaching at DePaul. I ended up saying, you need 2 books. You need boardwalking and stroking. And me, myself, they're on my they're my practicing app. I touch those every day because I feel like I get the most bang for my buck. Yep. You know, like I can use less. I get a really comprehensive musical hygiene, like the musical brushing your teeth of the double bass. You know, touching those books. Love them. Yeah,
it's cool. I like pairing them up because the stroking sort of like has the going across the board. Yeah, sort of like in a fretboard fashion, which is cool. And then I'd like to make sure I do a little bit of something that's going up and down. So maybe something that's like, the Glamian type scales, like that go, that move straight up and down. And then the Zimmerman's great to go with the stroking because it's more you're just in one position, obviously. And then the stroking makes you work that out, changing, dealing with the changing contacts.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Well, I love it. We're talking about a contemporary concept of bowing technique. Yeah. This amazing Fred Zimmerman book. I'd love to know how do you... I've struggled with how to approach that book because it's got these pages of like da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dee da. How do you use that book in your?
It made sense to me when I went and studied with Oren because she takes you through it. So that one of the first things she does is take you through that book, and of course you practice the patterns, but then there's an immediate application to what orchestra piece or what period of piece that it applies to, so like how that applies to Mozart. So she what the book might not do if you've never had somebody take you through it, you might not realize the relevance of this. But she did what made her a great teacher of this book specifically is that she created context for those exercises.
Yeah, we need to get Oren to do like a video course on that book. Because I think you're hitting on something so important because there are these texts, these things that we know are important in the bass world. Right. But and at Boardwalking, I think is one of those incredibly valuable things. It's like Hal distilled this insanely useful concept from Francois Rabat's approach. Right. Just like this one thing, there's so much value in there, but this one thing, it'll change your life on the bass. That book makes me pick better fingerings. It makes me sight read better. Yeah. And I find that with students, but I worry it's like I think so much of teaching or learning anything is like how someone gets you into that and ushers you in and explains that book. And I'm like, I'm not sure if people would get the same value if they just like got the book without any context, contemporary concept, or boardwalking or stroking or any of these. It's like how someone ushers you through it that's key.
Actually, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. I really thought about like I want to go through the stroking book with somebody who went through it with like, I don't know, Paul Ellison or Hal, like maybe one of their students or something that would take me on for a couple months and just take me through this book. How do you sort of like, because it's huge. I mean,
it's huge. And then how do you approach it? Like cell by cell? Do you go through the whole book? Do you do a second? Like that's it. There's another video course.
Yeah, right.
Anybody making video courses where Brad and I are coming with
I mean, it's been in the back of my mind, like, okay, at some point I want to sit down. I mean, I use it, you know, but tackling it is another thing, like, in its entirety.
And I want to get back to networking in a second and that whole thing, but this is an interesting direction.
Yeah, sure.
What do you have a specific kind of daily routine? You pull the bass, like Dennis Whitaker, for example, Houston Grand Opera principal bass, has a wonderful routine, and it's like he does these things. He even talks about like I work up a burn, like he's working out, takes a break, does something different, and very, very specific. Boom, boom, boom. I touch these things, and he's a monster bass player. So that like, do you have something specific you go through every day? Like first I do this, then I do this, or is it vary depending on the day? How does that work for you?
I basically have categories of things that I try to hit every day. So, for example, one is scales and arpeggios. One is what I would call sort of dexterity work. Another one is sort of position and or double stops. One category is shifting. And I know there's overlap. So
yeah, of course.
And then a lot of this is stolen from like Max Dimoff's like packet.
Yep.
Like you were talking about with Carl.
Yep.
I know Carl from, we did Spoleto years ago.
Yeah,
so
Carl Fenner.
I enjoyed listening to that
yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
I actually stole some stuff from him because I knew he was studying with Max back in the day. So yeah, that concept of like there's these things that you do every day, but I'm trying to mix and match them. Like I'm taking things from Al Laszlo's book.
Yep.
One of his students was nice enough to like burn me a copy, and there's some great stuff in that.
Yep.
What else? Yeah, the Max Dimoff thing. Some of the which I think is maybe based on some of the Gary Carr packet stuff and the Diana Gannett packet stuff. They seem to kind of be related, if I'm not mistaken. So like just like great stuff. And then Petracchi also hits on those things. So I try to categorize those things like, okay, what from the Petracchi book and the Dimhoff packet and Al Laszlo is, you know, related like in double stops or that's like kind of dexterity related or that's scale related or, you know, I'm trying to like sort of create these categories of things that are siphoning from all these different sources, and then I'm rotating those. So that, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of an experiment.
Well, it's great to be able to mix it up like that too.
Yeah.
Because anything to avoid your brain from getting shut off, you know, like keeping that creative. The creative, I think that's why practicing in rhythms or practicing, you know, that's so helpful because it's like making a new puzzle. And you don't want to solve the same puzzle every day. You want to solve a related puzzle, but a new puzzle, you know?
That was a big thing I picked up from Max Dimoff.
Okay, cool.
He came to Manhattan School a few times and did master classes and stuff.
Love Max. We both just saw Max perform.
We just,
the last couple of days.
Yeah. Even just that little solo in Rhapsody Espanol, he was do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just like it just sounded perfect.
And there's another person with a real specific practicing routine.
Right.
He's got his exercises. He's written them out. Freely gives them away. They're on my website. You just Google Max Dimoff warm up. They're
already downloaded. I already burned them. I already got a copy.
Okay, so that's great. So you got a routine, and it works for you. And you sound fabulous.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it is based kind of on the concept of Max Dimoff's packet, though, like that, because it looks like there's sort of categories.
Yeah,
because he has a shifting thing, and so anyway, it's basically a mix of things, roughly based on that. And then there's scales and arpeggios that are done Glamian style, like I was saying, and then across. And I find if I do those things diligently, that the bass playing feels great.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of keeping up with it.
Yeah, no, for
like
sure.
really go thoroughly doing it every day.
Having a daily practice, it's huge. It's like one of those. I've been reading this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's just about like doing just making small incremental progress. The stuff that doesn't make the news. Like he uses an example, like nobody ever read a news headline saying "Man eats chicken salad," but like it's like those it's those little decisions: chicken salad or burger. It's that over the top practice or don't practice. Do my warm up, but don't do my warm up. So it's cool. It's great. And it's great seeing somebody who, in a situation that could be challenging just because of the not being grounded in the same place. And it's great to. I think that's valuable for a lot of people, whatever they're doing, just to find a way to keep creatively motivated. And those are like a bajillion good resources. I'll make sure we list all those books. If people don't know them, that's like
I'm sure they do.
It's like Desert Island. Technique books we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
So back to know your why. Use the resources, whether you're in Phoenix or Albuquerque or Peoria, Illinois.
You need a model. Somebody to emulate.
Yeah.
So somebody. Who do you want to sound like? Who do you want to play like? Mm-hmm. All these things that the great artists that you've talked to talk about. And then the why will kind of guide you to where you need to go. Like, do you want to be an orchestral player? And that's the thing. And that's that's really what you want to do. We know the play. There's a lot of resources for that. Yeah. So, you let those decisions guide you. But I forgot the author's name, but I read this book, Start With Why. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, yeah. I also forgot the author's name.
Yeah,
we'll look it up.
It's great, though. I mean, but essentially it taps into that real reason. If you know why you're doing it, that will keep a clear path, I think.
Well, I can just tell by chatting with you that you would be somebody who'd be a pleasure to be with on a gig. And I think we're all so often our own worst enemies, unwittingly maybe. Yeah. And in the position you've seen, and the work you're talking about is the sort of work that could really you could not get hired back for something very easily based on something. So like maybe in the work you've like what sinks people like outside of the music, like we're a good player, or maybe including the music, but like what makes people not want to hire other people back? Like what are some things that like obvious traps that people, because I can think of a few in the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean some things are subjective, of course, like everybody has pet peeves, but I don't know. I guess my personal, if I had to give my personal opinion about it, I mean, I guess some of these are objective too. I mean, the obvious ones are like, show up on time. Mm-hmm. Bring your A game. Like, I know it sounds stupid to say it, but there's a lot of, I do see people get complacent, and I've done it too. I fall into that trap. I'm kind of comfortable, a little complacent, but like keeping your standard for yourself high.
And all these ways you're talking about is a great way of doing it. Like keeping that technique work going, having some projects.
Keep asking yourself that question. What can I do to raise my standards? What can I do to bring this to the next level? And on an interpersonal level, I've kind of found that like if you can kind of sort of be like a ninja with your vibe in the pit as much as possible, like you're not taking up a lot of space.
That's great.
You're not being a spectacle. Yeah. Like, look, we're all tired of looking at you because we see you at the airport and the hotel and the pit every day.
That's great.
And it's not that anybody hates you for that, but you want to like be respectful of even people's like audio and visual space. Like some people are having all sorts of different kinds of days when they come into work, right? You never know what happens. So if you're in there and bringing a lot of attention to yourself, and you're going to get on a nerve. You're going to get on a nerve at some point, and then contractor asks, "Oh, what do you think about so and so?" Well, who knows how that goes, but.
No, it's a lot. So you're on a submarine together or something. It might feel like I remember even just having an office job. I'm just like staring at this guy who's just like vaguely annoying me a little bit. It would never have bothered me except for the fact that it's just happening over
right
and
there.
over.
It's really easy to agitate if if the mood is right.
Yeah, I had a pit experience. Someone was bothering me so much physically that I brought an empty music stand and I raised it so I couldn't see him. And I found if I can't see him, my night's better. So I just won't look at him. It's probably not healthy, but that was my coping mechanism. So, but I totally hear you. Yeah, that's a good be a kind of a ninja with your vibe. That's great. I love it.
That's cool.
No, I love it.
I read this. Leland Sklar. This.
Yeah.
He had this 5 tips for musicians come out. I love those things because some of them apply and some of them don't because he's obviously doing a very different kind of gig. But I loved what he had to say about it's it's our job to bring a positive energy to the project. We're hired to play the bass, but we're also there to facilitate whatever's happening musically.
Yeah.
Whatever facilitates the project is being professional in essence because you're making it happen. That's your job to do that. And he talks about a lot about be a positive force in the project. If somebody, I'm not doing recordings like this, but for example, if there's a recording session and everybody goes in to listen, he gets up and goes in, takes an active part.
That's just little things. No, but that's important. Yeah, moving the project forward, trying to be a good citizen of the whatever endeavor you're part of.
And your interpersonal interactions, influence that as well. So
this is super fun.
I feel like I'm talking your ear off.
These are all my favorite topics. So I love digging into this. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I know we have basses to go try out, but I usually sort of start to wrap up with something and we've talked a bit about younger Brad, community college age or finishing up high school or somewhere around there, and we've also been talking about someone thinking about getting into what you're doing, but what would you tell young Brad if you could go back and have a conversation about anything?
So many things.
Yeah.
Me
too.
Everything from don't do this with your money and practice more efficiently, and you don't spending hours in the practice room isn't better than you know what I mean, practice efficiently, and but some of these things are just from experience. But a million things. I wish I could pinpoint one. Even everything from get plenty of rest.
Yeah.
Or
No, those are huge though. That's it's amazing what a different, and especially for what you're doing. And you can sort of go into this quasi debaucherous lifestyle, stand-up comedian lifestyle.
You could
with the kind of setup. So and again, it's one of those habits things. You maybe do that once in a while, but if you get into a habit of doing it every night, and then you project that out over months and years,
that becomes you.
Versus somebody who wakes up 8 or 9 every day, plays even just a little bit on the bass, and does those are the things that have a cumulative effect.
Absolutely,
on all aspects of your life.
Oh, totally. Everything from attitude about life, attitude about setbacks. I used to get so bogged down by just didn't have the tools to deal with adversity. And of course those things are still improving now, but if I could equip myself more with those things, maybe I would, we do that whole thing where we look back if I did this, I could have gone this much further.
One I wish I could go tell myself is I realize that if I have a disappointment, it's something big that I was looking to do doesn't pan through, I've learned, just me and my personality, I just need one day to feel crappy. And I'm just not going to feel good. I shouldn't even think about it or try. I'll try to or I'll get angry or I'll get whatever. And I just realized if I just let it go for a day, it's put it on my mind, go do something else. It's all that emotion is gone. But that's a lesson I wish I could go tell, because I would take an audition and it wouldn't work out. I'm just beating myself up. If I just gave it a day, it would get so much more objective. Or I apply for something, I get turned down for something, and I'm why? And give it a day.
It's allowing yourself to be a human being.
Yeah.
We've all been around musicians, and I've done this. We kind of glorify this, practice, and just no matter what, you're dishing it out. But it is, obviously important to be human and an emotional being, which is the whole point anyway.
Brad, I'm so glad I ran into you on the street. It's talking about
know.
serendipity. And this is awesome. This is a conversation I would have loved to have had, in any way over FaceTime or Skype, but just to be able to sit down in person and chat and check out your bass and hang out here at the VSA. It's been a lot of fun. Let's do it again sometime.
I would love to. It's been a magical week, and it's because I ran into you and Arnold. So great meeting you.
I know.
But now I want to hold you. Now I want to hold you close. I don't want to ever have to let you go. Now I want to hold you tight. I don't want to go back to the moonlight.
Brad, you rock. So great to chat with you. So much fun to hang out in person and run into you on the street in Cleveland, along with Arnold Schnitzer. It was just a super fun time. And folks, I really hope you enjoyed listening to this. What an interesting guy. What a cool career arc. And I can't wait to follow along with what he's doing in the future. If you'd like to reach out and get in touch, feedback at Contrabass Conversations will put you in touch with me. I love to hear from people who listen to the show and give me ideas on guests or topics or that sort of thing. So that would be great. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Steve Hinchy, Michael Cooper, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. Mitch is making beautiful basses in the Dallas area. Learn more on his website, mitchmooring.com. And thank you to Krista Copper, who's archiving and cataloging everything that we cover here on the podcast. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.